Keeping a vehicle locked down for 33 days goes way beyond standard protocol and stretches far past simple police diligence. Holding it for that long means they are sweating out a major breakthrough, like pending toxicology screens, secondary testing, or a smoking gun that will permanently clear the kids or put a target on a totally new suspect. Until that magical puzzle piece drops into place, the ride gathers dust. The loved ones agonize, the rumor mill spins out of control, and this sweet older lady is still out there somewhere in the dark. Anyone holding on to even the smallest detail regarding this tragic vanishing needs to dial up the Federal Bureau at 1-800, call FBI, or reach out to the Pima County authorities at 5235-149-00 immediately. There is a staggering bounty of more than $1.2 million sitting on the table for any tip that directly results in bringing this woman back safely. Make sure you hit subscribe on the Crime Uncovered channel so you never miss a single update as this twisted mystery unfolds. Smash that notification bell and pass this video around to your friends, because somebody walking the streets right now holds the key. A real person out there knows the exact truth behind this tragedy. And every single time you share, watch, or talk about this story, you boost the odds of that individual finally spilling their secrets. This beloved grandmother deserves justice, and her grieving relatives are absolutely entitled to the truth. Meanwhile, that little blue crossover gathering dust in a mechanic's bay after spending 33 days behind police tape could very well be the golden ticket to solving this whole mess. The real million-dollar question is what dark secrets that evidence will unleash, and why the local top cop absolutely refuses to breathe a word about it. It was 10:47 on the morning of February 3rd, 2026, when a recovery vehicle rolled up to a residence tucked away in the Catalina foothills of Tucson. The operator hopped out of the cab, strolled straight up the paved driveway, and secured a bright blue Honda CR-V. That SUV was registered to Annie Guthrie, whose 84-year-old mother, Nancy, had mysteriously disappeared into thin air just 2 nights prior. This automobile served as the absolute last known environment Nancy occupied before an unknown assailant snatched her from her own house right around 2. In the dead of night, law enforcement hoisted that vehicle onto a flatbed, hauled it straight to the Pima County Sheriff's impound lot, and secured it behind woven wire fencing under constant, round-the-clock camera watch. Fast forward 33 days, and that SUV remains locked up tight as critical evidence in an ongoing abduction case, yet something about this whole situation just does not add up. Back on the 20th of February, Sheriff Chris Nano publicly addressed the media, explicitly stating that the Guthrie family had been entirely ruled out. He stressed they were completely free of suspicion and not considered persons of interest, reiterating this definitive stance on both the 22nd and the 25th of February. He assured the press that the relatives played absolutely no role in the vanishing of Nancy, emphatically telling reporters that they were suffering victims who deserved peace. Even with those assurances, as of March 5th, 2026, that blue Honda CR-V is still sitting behind bars at the Pima County Sheriff's evidence yard. It has been torn apart and deeply scrutinized for 33 consecutive days, all authorized by a judge who firmly believed probable cause existed to find criminal evidence inside that very vehicle. The head of the department refuses to offer any justification or reveal exactly what his deputies are hunting for. He completely dodges the glaring inconsistency of exonerating a family while simultaneously hoarding their automobile for over a month, which is why we are diving into the incredible data authorities can actually pull from modern cars. We will explore what a 33-day vehicle hold truly signifies for the trajectory of this massive investigation. We will also break down why the eerie quiet surrounding this particular automobile might just be the most pivotal clue in the entire mystery. But first, we need to establish the background. You really have to get acquainted with Annie Guthrie and trace the exact events of that final evening before her mother vanished forever. Nancy Guthrie was a devoted mother to 3 kids. Her eldest is Savannah Guthrie, the famous anchor from NBC's Today Show and easily one of the most familiar personalities on national television. Then there is Cameron Guthrie, a highly skilled F-16 fighter pilot, alongside the middle sibling Annie, who ended up marrying Tommaso Feliciano and staying right near her mom in Tucson, Arizona. The couple carved out a beautiful life for themselves in Tucson, settling just a stone's throw away from Nancy's residence up in the Catalina foothills. While Savannah chased her broadcast dreams to New York and Cameron's military duties relocated him nationwide, Annie remained planted as the dependable daughter who constantly visited. She frequently shared meals with her mom and always went out of her way to guarantee that 84-year-old Nancy was perfectly comfortable. Even with restricted movement and severe health hurdles, Nancy was well cared for, especially on the night of Friday, January 31st, 2026, when she was invited over for a homemade meal. The elderly woman showed up, shared a lovely supper with the couple, and enjoyed some great conversation. It played out like any ordinary family gathering, completely peaceful and standard, until supper wrapped up around 9:30 in the evening when it was time for her to head back. Annie and Tommaso kindly volunteered to give her a ride, which she happily accepted as they all strolled out to their blue Honda CR-V. Based on the couple's later statements to detectives, the elderly mother took the front passenger side while Tommaso got behind the wheel. Annie slid into the rear row, and the trio embarked on the quick commute over to Nancy's place, situated in the Catalina foothills. They rolled straight into the driveway, popped the garage open, carefully assisted the older woman indoors, and double-checked that she was completely secure for the night. After that, the couple headed back to their own house to sleep, unknowingly marking the absolute final moment anyone in her family ever laid eyes on her. Roughly 4.5 hours ticked by until the clock struck 2 in the morning on February 1st, 2026. An unidentified intruder sporting a mask, gloves, and a weapon suddenly showed up on her porch, knocked out the security camera, and breached the front door. Exactly 41 minutes after that breach, her medical pacemaker permanently lost connection with her cell phone, meaning she had tragically passed away. When daylight finally broke on the 1st of February, the 84-year-old was totally missing, leaving behind a chilling trail that pointed back to the last automobile she ever rode in. That blue Honda CR-V, officially owned by her daughter Annie, remains the absolute final space she inhabited right before getting swallowed by the darkness. Just 2 days following this horrific event, law enforcement swooped in to confiscate the vehicle. Before we dive deeper into the fate of that SUV and uncover why it has been stuck in a police lockup for 33 days, make sure you hit that subscribe button. For Crime Uncovered Immediately, our channel digs tirelessly into the gritty specifics that mainstream outlets completely overlook. We shine a spotlight on hidden evidence and expose glaring inconsistencies to show you exactly what is boiling under the surface of these massive investigations. Smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because grasping the true mechanics of police work will completely alter your perspective on true crime stories. Around the 3rd of February, 2026, a wrecker service pulled right up to the property where the couple had their blue Honda CR-V parked. The worker hitched the vehicle, dragged it onto the back of his rig, and transported it straight to the official impound yard run by the Pima County Sheriff. This was definitely not a situation where the family just willingly handed over their keys and offered up their ride. They were not casually volunteering to help. This was a strict, state-mandated confiscation proving that detectives had secured a certified search warrant. Cops cannot just snatch up your personal property on a whim, as dragging a car into an evidence bay requires rock-solid approval from a sitting judge. Under the 4th Amendment of our Constitution, citizens are shielded from any unjustified meddling or property seizures by the government. Before the cops can haul your vehicle away, tear it down, and stash it for an extended period, a magistrate has to sign off on probable cause. That legal standard requires way more than just a gut feeling. A judge actually has to read a sworn statement from detectives detailing concrete, undeniable facts pointing to criminal evidence hidden inside that specific ride. Therefore, deep within the files of the Pima County Courthouse, a valid search warrant for Annie and Tommaso's Honda CR-V is sitting right now. Investigators drew up that document, handed it over to a magistrate, and the judge scrutinized the details before concluding that, without a doubt, solid grounds exist to suspect the ride holds crucial clues regarding the abduction of Nancy Guthrie. Consequently, the magistrate inked the paperwork, which is an action they never take on a mere whim. The courts fully recognize how severe it is to confiscate a personal automobile, since it strips away the owner's mobility and breaches their personal boundaries. Doing so broadcasts that the police firmly link the automobile to a criminal act, and the official paperwork would clearly outline exactly what the authorities were hunting down. They are not just looking for random clues, but highly targeted materials like the onboard computer's electronic logs, along with biological traces such as DNA, blood spatter, stray hairs, fabric threads, and latent prints. Essentially, any microscopic proof that Nancy Guthrie was in that passenger cabin. Way past the hour, Annie and Tommaso claimed they let her out, prompting the cops to move in as soon as the ink was dry. Authorities impounded the automobile and relocated it to a highly guarded compound to ensure the chain of custody stayed absolutely flawless. This restricted lot prevents anyone from getting near the vehicle without proper clearance, meaning every single individual who laid a hand on it, every item pulled from the interior, and every forensic swab taken would be recorded with obsessive accuracy. Because if this investigation ever ends up in front of a jury, the state's attorneys must demonstrate beyond a shadow of a doubt that everything retrieved from the automobile was managed perfectly. They must show that zero contamination occurred and that the trail of possession was completely unbroken from the initial tow all the way to the courtroom floor. On March 5th, 2026, an investigative reporter for the Cold Case Foundation named Chris McDonough reached out to an insider at the Pima County Sheriff's Office with a very blunt inquiry. He wanted to know if Annie's ride was still locked up in the impound lot, to which he got a definitive yes, prompting him to ask if the vehicle was officially logged on the books. After confirming it had a formal case tag attached, the journalist demanded to know the current location of the automobile. His contact revealed the vehicle had been sent over to a local garage to be put back together following a brutal forensic teardown, which led McDonough to inquire about the specific towing outfit used. Even though the designated wrecking crew admitted they handled the transport job, they claimed a strict non-disclosure agreement prevented them from sharing any specifics, proving without a doubt that this is no ordinary police impound. The cops are not just being lazy about giving someone their wheels back. They are conducting an intense, continuous scientific probe of a vehicle they suspect holds the key to Nancy Guthrie's vanishing. 33 days have passed without the car being handed back over, and the local sheriff refuses to clarify the holdup, mainly because today's automobiles are way more than just a way to get around. These machines are basically mobile hard drives logging every move you make, meaning the detectives who snatched Annie's ride were hunting for far more than simple smudges on a window. Authorities were digging for digital breadcrumbs capable of either backing up or completely shredding the narrative. Annie and Tommaso sold them about that fateful evening. Any ride rolling off the assembly line post-2015 is equipped with built-in telematics. This complex tech tracks your destinations, your cruising speeds, every door latch that clicks, and even the exact passenger arrangements inside the cabin. Every single action is permanently stored with precise timestamps, just waiting for a savvy tech detective to pull it all out, and the navigation system alone is enough to recreate their exact movements. Detectives possess the capability to map out the precise route the automobile took the second it pulled away from Annie's driveway. The software will reveal whether the driver headed straight for NY's property as claimed, or if they took some secret detours along the way. The logs show exactly how many minutes they idled at NY's residence, along with their precise destination immediately following that stop. Law enforcement can either validate the entire timeline offered up by the couple or blow massive holes in their story, though the satellite tracking is merely scratching the surface. Late model Honda CR-Vs come fully loaded with advanced pressure plates underneath every single cushion. Built primarily to calibrate the airbags, these internal scales actually document the exact mass of every passenger and log the duration of their trip. Assuming Nancy rode shotgun from Annie's spot over to NY's place, the electronic readouts will absolutely reflect a senior citizen's body mass sitting there for the whole ride. However, if those internal scales pick up something wildly off script, like a completely vacant chair or a passenger of a totally different build, that is going to spell major trouble, highlighting a massive contradiction between the official statement and the undeniable digital truth. The automobile's computer tracks the exact timing of every single latch release from the driver's side to the rear hatches, meaning if the couple swore they assisted Nancy out of the shotgun seat, the internal hard drive better prove that specific door swinging open at NY's property right when they supposedly pulled up. Should the readouts contradict that narrative, detectives will demand an explanation. And that brings us to the wireless connection. Whenever NY's smartphone synced up with the dashboard console, the computer banked it, saving the hardware ID, the exact sync time, and the entire duration of the link. This tech gives the authorities a crystal clear picture of exactly whose mobile devices were riding around in that vehicle during the critical timeline. Authorities can easily merge that tech footprint with mobile network pings to construct a flawless timeline detailing exactly who stood where and at what exact moment. All this digital gold is housed inside a tiny little tech box, usually tucked right beneath the dash, meaning detectives must completely rip the system out to grab the files. Once transported to a high-tech crime lab, experts generate an absolute replica of every single byte of hidden information. By keeping the primary hardware locked away and strictly handling the duplicate, they guarantee absolute integrity, which is a seriously lengthy procedure. Seasoned professionals will tell you that ripping digital vehicle logs requires immense caution and easily eats up several weeks. Tech wizards must scrutinize the findings, weighing them against bystander accounts and physical clues to ensure the entire narrative actually makes sense. Should things fall apart, meaning the vehicle's electronic memory blows Annie and Tommaso's story completely out of the water, the cops face a massive crossroads. Will they drag those two into an interrogation room and slam the glaring inconsistencies right on the table? Or do they hold off for a stronger smoking gun, operating completely under the radar while letting the relatives think they are entirely off the hook? Whatever bombshells were buried in those digital readouts, it gave them enough firepower to seize the ride for 33 straight days pending deeper scrutiny. Let us be real here. Law enforcement does not just impound a supposedly innocent household's automobile for over 4 weeks without a damning motive. It is a blatant justification that the local badge wearer flat out declines to discuss. Which brings us to another wild point. Back on February 20th, Sheriff Chris Nanos faced a sea of reporters and boldly broadcasted that the Guthrie crew was completely exonerated. He repeatedly stressed they were simply grieving loved ones needing space, urging folks to drop the wild conspiracy theories about them having blood on their hands. The man went completely out of his way to paint them as totally blameless victims, enduring an absolutely horrific nightmare. However, the very automobile where Nancy Guthrie took her final documented breath is still sitting behind heavy steel doors at the local impound lot. Technicians are actively ripping it apart, running extensive tests, and keeping a heavy investigative label slapped across the windshield. The tag basically screams, "Detectives are far from finished." So why hasn't an allegedly innocent family gotten their ride back? What hidden secrets are investigators still hunting down? And what exactly popped up on that digital scan to warrant 33 days of hardcore digging? Our main guy wearing the star remains totally tight-lipped regarding this mystery. And honestly, that dead quiet speaks volumes more than any press release ever could. Keep in mind, the digital tracking is merely chapter 1, because while the geeks are ripping hard drives, the crime scene crew is playing an entirely different game. These elite laboratory pros are currently on the hunt for microscopic physical proof. We are talking genetic material or crimson stains that might prove Nancy Guthrie never actually left that back seat when her supposed loved ones claim she did. Anytime the Federal Evidence Squad or a local investigative unit completely tears apart an automobile for a major case, they do not mess around. The ride is treated exactly like a literal murder room, meaning they snap pictures of absolutely everything while logging every single smudge and discarded wrapper. After the visual sweep, they dive in incredibly deep, running cotton tips over every square inch to capture stray genetic markers. From the shifter and seat restraints to the steering column, anywhere a person rests their palm instantly becomes a goldmine of dead skin and perspiration. Should Nancy's genetic blueprint pop up in weird spots that ruin the whole innocent car ride narrative, detectives will demand immediate answers. Technicians will bust out the heavy-duty blacklights, scouring the upholstery for bodily secretions you could never spot during a normal afternoon. Cushions get ripped apart to expose the foam underneath, while heavy-duty vacuums suck up every stray follicle, thread, and microscopic speck of dirt. Every single crumb gets tossed into sterile packaging, labeled properly, and shipped straight over to the science guys. Naturally, the cargo hold gets a massive comb-over, because if she was taken hostage, that rear compartment is exactly where the gruesome clues would hide. They are actively scanning for the tiniest crimson splatters that only special chemicals can illuminate, alongside loose strands of hair left behind. Any red flag suggesting a body was stuffed in the back is crucial, especially if it looks like someone recently scrubbed the area down. Things like fresh soap smells, harsh chemicals, or lingering bleach fumes basically scream that somebody went on a panicked scrubbing spree to hide their sins. When criminals completely lose their cool after a massive mistake, their first instinct is always to grab the sponges and erase the nightmare. Modern science, however, easily sees right through those desperate wipe downs, frequently recovering genetic traces no matter how hard the culprit scrubbed. Digging this deep obviously burns a ton of time, and genetic sequencing alone demands weeks of waiting. Assuming the swabs hit the mailroom back in early February, the final laboratory reports are probably just hitting the detective's desk today. If those incoming files show Nancy's profile hiding in bizarre spots or reveal violent fluids ruining the innocent alibi, all bets are entirely off and the investigation pivots immediately. The police are absolutely not handing those keys over until they figure out exactly what kind of horror show happened inside that cabin. Ex-federal investigator Maureen O'Connell dedicated 20 years to ripping apart global crime sites with the Elite Response Unit. During a recent chat on Chris McDonough's show, she clarified that tearing apart a suspect's ride for a massive investigation is a grueling, multi-week nightmare. Skipping steps is strictly forbidden in this line of work, and speed is absolutely never the main goal. Cops must inspect every single inch, since they only get a single shot at the prize, meaning the ride stays locked up until the science guys sign off on every test. See, handing back that vehicle prematurely only to realize you skipped a crucial forensic swab or overlooked a massive clue means the damage is already done. The chain of custody is permanently broken, and you have essentially torpedoed your whole investigation right there. Therefore, the authorities keep it locked down in absolute silence while they bide their time, dragging this out for 33 days and counting. For that entire stretch, Annie and Tommaso have been stranded without their ride, while detectives treat it like an ongoing crime scene. During that exact same window, the head of the department has insisted the relatives are innocent, yet he flat out refuses to clarify why their SUV is still locked up in the impound lot. This massive, glaring inconsistency is simply staring everyone right in the face. If these folks are truly off the hook, hand the keys back. Otherwise, if there are lingering suspicions, the top cop had zero business publicly absolving them. Those two realities absolutely clash and cannot exist in the same universe, leaving us all wondering what the real truth is. Exactly what sort of smoking gun did the forensic team uncover inside that ride to warrant such a massive delay, and why are the higher-ups dodging this painfully obvious question? Back on February 20th, 2026, Sheriff Chris Nano stepped up to the podium and dropped a bombshell that sent shockwaves across the true crime world and everyone backing the Guthrie family. He stated clearly that the Guthries were totally off the suspect list, completely free of any suspicion, and were actually the ones suffering in this tragic ordeal. He even pleaded with the press and the general public to back off, give them some space, and let them heal in peace. That exact same narrative was repeated on February 22nd to the local news, and he doubled down on February 25th when pressed about Annie and Tommaso's status. He firmly insisted they were officially ruled out and played absolutely zero part in NY vanishing. However, fast forward to March 5th, 2026, and that blue Honda CR-V owned by Annie and Tommaso is still being held captive as crucial evidence in the Nancy Guthrie abduction case. Just pause and really digest the implications of the chief publicly declaring this family completely innocent. He essentially broadcasted to the entire globe that they were free and clear, begging the internet sleuths to drop the wild conspiracy theories about them. He painted them as grieving survivors who desperately need compassion and quiet time, yet he continues to hold their primary mode of transportation hostage. This is the exact same vehicle snatched up via a legal warrant, currently enduring more than 4 weeks of intense forensic teardowns. It is currently stranded at a mechanic's garage, getting put back together piece by piece after the crime lab completely dismantled it looking for clues. You simply cannot have these two conflicting truths operating side by side, without somebody offering a logical reason. Either give the innocent family their wheels back or admit that you found something damning inside and that your public exoneration was just a calculated PR move. Bob Gilliam, a seasoned veteran who dedicated 36 years of his life to wearing the badge, weighed in on this very issue. With a massive background handling heavy-hitting detective work, he called out this blatant hypocrisy loud and clear during the McDonough roundtable. He basically stated that keeping the ride locked up makes zero sense if you have already given the relatives a clean bill of health. Gilliam questioned what the cops were even hunting for if the owners were innocent and demanded to know why they were feeding the public lies if they weren't. He made it crystal clear that in his professional background, a formal clearance from a prosecutor or a police precinct is a massive deal. That declaration only happens because detectives have chased down every single lead, and the hard facts completely eliminate that individual from the suspect pool. Under normal circumstances, you never proclaim someone innocent and then stubbornly refuse to hand over their personal property. It defies logic completely unless, as Gilliam theorized, giving them a pass had absolutely nothing to do with facts and everything to do with managing the heat. Right out of the gate, the entire Guthrie clan, especially Annie and Tommaso, were thrown under a massive, unforgiving microscope. Armchair detectives ripped apart every single syllable they uttered, while true crime hosts aggressively picked apart their body language. People on the internet mercilessly pointed fingers at them, armed with nothing but the flimsy detail that they were the final folks to see Nancy breathing. The overwhelming backlash was savage, nonstop, and in the eyes of many experts, incredibly unjust and totally detrimental to solving the case. Assuming the top brass stepped up to the mic to publicly exonerate the household, there might have been a hidden motive. Maybe it was a deliberate tactic to cool off the mob, offering Annie and Tommaso a desperate chance to catch their breath. The goal was likely to pivot the internet's focus toward catching the real monster, though that strategy completely backfires since folks now assume the relatives are blameless. Meanwhile, hidden away from the cameras, the crime lab is still actively tearing their vehicle apart for clues. They are pulling digital records and anxiously awaiting forensic returns that possess the power to flip this whole mystery upside down. John Lamb, a guy who used to run the show as an FBI supervisory special agent, dropped a major truth bomb during that exact same broadcast. He highlighted that only a district attorney holds the real power to exonerate a suspect, completely bypassing sheriffs, local chiefs, and even federal agents. In the eyes of the law, an official clearance only happens when the DA reviews the file and concludes there simply isn't enough meat on the bone to press charges. The cops can definitely tell the press they aren't actively zeroing in on a specific individual right now. They are free to state a person isn't on the radar today, but handing out a permanent get-out-of-jail-free card is strictly a lawyer's call. Lamb noted that he has personally watched departments clear a name for the cameras only to slap handcuffs on that exact same person months down the road when fresh clues dropped. Such situations completely destroy the integrity of the probe, leaving everyone wondering if letting them off the hook was a genuine move or just some calculated tactic. Matt Murphy, a lawyer and former prosecutor, echoed this exact sentiment. He has actually been extremely vocal about the Nancy Guthrie situation during his numerous television interviews. Law enforcement simply cannot rule out a suspect before every single piece of physical data gets thoroughly reviewed. Detectives must exhaust every single clue until they are absolutely positive that an individual is innocent. Therefore, it is highly suspicious if the sheriff officially let the Guthrie relatives off the hook on February 20th. Yet crime scene techs are still digging through the vehicle belonging to Annie on March 5th, which means we are looking at two highly probable scenarios. The first option is that authorities jumped the gun and exonerated them way too fast without having all the facts. The alternative is that law enforcement kept the vehicle for a totally different reason that has nothing to do with Annie and Tommaso. However, if the authorities are holding onto the vehicle for entirely separate motives, we have to ask what those motives could possibly be. Could the police suspect that an entirely different person was driving it? Perhaps Nancy rode in that specific automobile during a time frame that completely slipped past Annie and Tommaso. It is also highly likely that the forensic clues point straight toward an unknown attacker who somehow managed to get inside the ride. The head of the department desperately needs to address these concerns especially since exonerating the relatives while simultaneously keeping their property in lockup makes absolutely no sense. Getting answers is absolutely crucial when dealing with an 84-year-old lady who vanished into thin air over 4 weeks ago. The community has every right to demand complete honesty, particularly because the odds of discovering her breathing diminish with each passing sunset. Her loved ones are equally entitled to know the absolute truth. Ultimately, Nancy Guthrie is owed a legitimate probe driven purely by hard facts, completely free from any shady political agendas or sneaky media spin. Holding an automobile for 33 days is a massive stretch of time, which essentially guarantees they found something incredibly important. At this stage, keeping everyone in the dark is completely unacceptable. We saw a huge red flag when the insider working for Chris McDonough at the Pima County Sheriff's Office mentioned that the automobile was sitting at a local garage. Hearing that specific phrase immediately set off alarm bells for all the experts on the panel, mainly because a garage means something entirely different in the world of criminal justice. We are certainly not talking about a simple buffing job or a fresh coat of paint. The cops are definitely not polishing out scuff marks or swapping out shattered bulbs just to hand Annie and Tommaso a beautifully detailed ride. In reality, they are meticulously rebuilding the entire thing after a massive forensic teardown. Anytime an automobile gets swept for clues during a massive criminal probe, the crime scene techs practically rip it to shreds. They physically rip out the chairs just to reach the chassis and hunt for concealed clues, while completely tearing up the floor mats to inspect the metal underneath. Even the front console gets absolutely gutted just so the experts can pull out the central computer systems and track the digital footprint. Detectives will strip down the interior side doors to search for slipped or intentionally stashed items, though the extent of the destruction really depends on the specific clues they are chasing. However, when you are trying to poke holes in an alibi and prove that Nancy Guthrie rode inside that specific ride during an unexpected time frame, the forensic crew will leave no stone unturned. Once the meticulous inspection officially wraps up, a professional crew actually has to rebuild the entire machine. That is the true definition of a mechanic's garage in this particular scenario. It serves as a specialized location equipped with the exact gear and knowledge required to stitch together an automobile that the police experts previously tore apart. They have to manually plug in all the electrical cables, bolt the chairs back into place, lay down the fabric, and essentially get the engine running perfectly again. However, you really need to focus on this next critical detail. Despite sitting in a random auto body shop, the automobile remains a massive piece of official evidence. It stays under the strict supervision of the police force and firmly belongs to the official chain of custody. The mechanics definitely do not possess the title. Furthermore, Annie and Tommaso are strictly forbidden from even going near it. The mechanics are simply reconstructing the machine so that it can actually drive down the street if the detectives ever choose to hand over the keys. Discovering that the ride is getting pieced back together 33 days after the initial confiscation basically confirms that the hardcore scientific sweep is effectively finished. The authorities finally secured all their vital clues. They shipped off the biological swabs to the scientists and successfully downloaded every byte of digital intelligence. Every single inch was heavily photographed and extensively cataloged. At this exact moment, they are just sitting around anticipating the official science reports and the final computer breakdowns. They are simply holding out to see if the hard science validates or totally destroys the specific timeline that Annie and Tommaso provided about that fateful evening. During this tense waiting game, the authorities are having the automobile fully restored. The reasoning is pretty straightforward. If the test scores clear Annie and Tommaso, the cops will surrender the keys, and the ride actually has to start when they drive it away. On the flip side, if the forensic data exposes some massive holes in their story, things will take a very dark turn. Should the physical clues directly challenge the narrative pitched by Annie and Tommaso, that automobile will never see the light of day again. It could literally stay locked inside the police impound forever. In fact, it could easily become the star piece of evidence during a massive courtroom battle. Brian O'Connell, who used to work for the FBI, made a brilliant point that law enforcement agencies routinely lock up automobiles for several years, or frankly, multiple decades. She specifically highlighted a massive murder probe from 1984 where the killer's 1968 Mustang Shelby Cobra remained stuck inside a massive police warehouse all the way into 1999. A solid 15 years vanished. But because the murder remained totally unsolved, that classic muscle machine stayed completely locked away as crucial proof. When you are dealing with a heavy-hitting investigation, you absolutely never toss out the smoking gun. Just because the clock is ticking, you lock it down tightly and protect it at all costs. Ultimately, if the whole mess finally reaches a jury, you better be fully prepared to drag that pristine evidence into the courtroom looking exactly the way it did on the day you confiscated it. Sending the vehicle off to a mechanic strongly implies that detectives expect to hand it back over at some point. Had they planned on keeping the automobile forever, it would likely stay in pieces inside the police impound lot. Putting the components back together points toward a potential return, even though it remains locked up right now. That detail is absolutely crucial, especially since 33 days have passed with the forensic sweep seemingly finished and the vehicle fully rebuilt. Yet the authorities continue to hold on to it as an active exhibit, completely off limits to Annie and Tommaso. This signals that the investigative team is holding out for a specific breakthrough, perhaps a laboratory report or a concrete verification. They need that final puzzle piece to either clear the vehicle for return or provide solid grounds to keep it locked away. Until those answers surface, the automobile remains trapped in a bureaucratic gray area, completely restored but far from liberated. The absolute lack of transparency regarding this missing link feels incredibly heavy, while the public demands to know one straightforward thing. What specific clues did the authorities uncover inside that ride to warrant keeping it for 33 days after exonerating the relatives, because we remain completely in the dark? The truth might stay hidden forever unless prosecutors officially drop the hammer and take this entire ordeal to court. However, we can definitely piece together some solid theories based on standard police procedures and the type of clues that trigger such intense microscopic attention. Imagine the massive red flag if the internal digital logs completely shatter the narrative provided by Annie and Tommaso. Claiming Nancy rode shotgun becomes a major issue if the pressure sensors recorded a vacant cushion or registered a completely different body mass. A direct trip from their residence to NY's place sounds innocent enough until the satellite tracking reveals hidden detours they conveniently forgot to mention. Insisting the commute lasted a mere 15 minutes looks incredibly suspicious when the internal computer records clock a full 30. That type of friction between the digital footprint and the official story instantly sets off alarm bells for any seasoned detective. While it does not automatically prove they committed a crime, it gives law enforcement more than enough ammunition to maintain custody of the ride. Consider the massive implications if biological traces point toward a mystery passenger occupying that vehicle. Discovering an unidentified man's genetic material hidden inside the cargo area or tucked away in weird spots changes the entire trajectory of the case. Such a bizarre find strongly hints that a secret stranger hitched a ride or took the wheel entirely behind the owner's backs. A potential perpetrator could have easily slipped inside and left genetic breadcrumbs behind, especially since processing those microscopic clues takes several weeks. Swabs shipped out to the technicians back in early February would only just be hitting the detectives' desks right about now, potentially revealing a mystery profile. The authorities then require extra time to cross-reference those hits against national registries and bounce them off clues pulled from NY's property. Identifying that exact person becomes paramount, especially if the interior reeks of a frantic, heavy-duty bleaching session. Spotting a pristine, overly scrubbed cargo hold or finding immaculate hidden crevices definitely makes you wonder what went down in there. Normal folks do not randomly shampoo their trunks or wipe down their seats with hardcore disinfectants unless they are desperately trying to erase a mess. Laboratory tests are incredibly efficient at sniffing out the lingering residue of commercial bleach and soaps. Science can pinpoint the exact timeline of the scrub down and even pull up traces of DNA if the criminal missed a spot, uncovering proof of a frantic detail job happening sometime between January 31st and the official impound date changes everything. Detectives would immediately push to find out what kind of mess warranted such an intense cover-up operation. Finding microscopic dirt, leaves, or pollen crammed into the wheel wells that perfectly aligns with a crucial crime scene tied to NY's vanishing acts as a smoking gun. This biological footprint proves the automobile traveled to a secret destination that the couple deliberately left out of their story. Such a hidden stopover could hold the ultimate key to locating Nancy or piecing together the grim reality of her fate. The dirt out in the Arizona wasteland boasts incredibly unique chemical signatures based entirely on the precise local geography. Scraping isolated badlands, mud off the bumper that makes absolutely zero sense for a simple drive between Annie and NY's places raises massive suspicions. Law enforcement would demand answers about that unexplainable detour, especially if they stumbled across literal bloodstains. Technicians can easily expose invisible biological drops using glowing chemicals, meaning a positive hit for NY's DNA completely shatters the alibi. Discovering those stains in bizarre spots that contradict her simple ride home from supper completely rewrites the entire narrative. Finding crimson splatters locked in the cargo hold or pooled on the rear floorboards screams that a brutal struggle went down. Uncovering any of those gruesome details gives the department full authorization to keep the ride locked up until they unravel the bloody mystery. Seeing the head of the department let the relatives off the hook while stubbornly clinging to their transportation speaks volumes. It strongly implies that whatever clues sit inside the cabin do not necessarily point the finger at the couple, but definitely demand a closer look. The hidden evidence might actually shine a spotlight on a third-party suspect who managed to get their hands on the keys. These findings could establish a fresh timeline that requires cross-referencing, or perhaps they spark new theories that only advanced laboratory work can solve. Perhaps exonerating them was simply a calculated tactical maneuver. It is entirely possible law enforcement cleared those relatives simply to cool down media outrage, all while detectives quietly examined the vehicle's hidden clues in the background. We remain entirely in the dark, yet the glaring lack of transparency from the chief over these 33 days speaks volumes, especially since staying quiet is completely unacceptable when an 84-year-old lady remains missing and time is ticking. Conflicting narratives cannot be tolerated whatsoever. Both the community and relatives are owed a solid explanation as to why the automobile remains locked up in a garage rather than parked safely at Annie and Tommaso's home, assuming they are actually innocent. Let us look back at the 5th of March, 2026. Veteran reporter Chris McDonough gathered a specialized group to dissect the Nancy Guthrie mystery, which included former Federal Bureau operatives. The Brain Trust also featured seasoned murder investigators and criminal minds specialists with vast experience handling countless high-profile mysteries. Once McDonough dropped the bombshell that Annie's automobile remained impounded 33 days post-confiscation, the room took notice. The experts instantly reacted, agreeing this was highly unusual, far from standard protocol, and extremely telling, according to former federal agent Maureen O'Connell. She had dedicated 20 years to scouring national crime scenes with the Bureau's elite forensic unit. She noted that retaining a vehicle for 33 days implies either detectives uncovered major clues and need lab verification, or something else entirely. Alternatively, authorities might just be exercising extreme diligence to avoid returning crucial property too soon, only to realize its value down the road. When dealing with situations of this magnitude, O'Connell clarified exactly what was happening. Involving a vehicle owned by the final individuals to see the missing woman breathing, authorities must test absolutely every single trace. Detectives must patiently anticipate all testing outcomes, double-check all alibis, and never surrender the property until its investigative value is completely exhausted. Extracting digital diagnostic data by itself could easily consume several weeks, she warned. Experts in modern vehicular technology must meticulously pull and interpret the complex information buried deep inside the automobile's internal hard drive. That extracted digital footprint then needs careful comparison alongside mobile tracking logs and nearby security camera captures. Plus, bystander testimonies must align perfectly, meaning detectives require extra time to untangle any digital inconsistencies before handing back the keys. Meanwhile, veteran murder investigator John Lamb weighed in on the unfolding situation. Bringing over 30 years of Virginia law enforcement experience to the table, he emphasized how deeply important the actual seizure document really is. A magistrate had to scrutinize the sworn statement and concur that criminal proof likely existed inside that specific automobile. Magistrates simply will not grant legal permission to rummage through a target's property purely on a fishing expedition. He stressed that legal authorization requires concrete, documented justifications proving the ride was directly involved in the tragic event. The seasoned cop recalled past investigations where rides sat in impound lots for countless months or even multiple years. This happened strictly because those machines held the absolute key to securing a courtroom conviction. He referenced a 1984 murder file where the target ride sat rotting in lockup 15 years down the line strictly because the mystery remained unsolved. If the department still has custody of this automobile 33 days later, it means it holds massive value, Lamb insisted. It either hides vital clues or sparked fresh mysteries requiring further digging, a sentiment echoed by 36-year policing veteran Bob Gilliam. He brought his own weighty perspective, having previously served as a high-ranking county deputy himself. He zeroed in on the massive disconnect between exonerating the relatives while simultaneously keeping their property locked up, repeating a familiar point. Gilliam passionately argued that declaring someone innocent while hoarding their personal belongings makes absolutely zero logical sense. You either give the ride back because they are truly free of suspicion, or you keep your mouth shut about their innocence while doubts linger. The former deputy hinted that the public exoneration was likely a calculated media stunt rather than a decision grounded in solid fact. Those relatives were facing a relentless public witch hunt, taking an absolute beating across the internet. Perhaps the boss just wanted to throw water on the fire by publicly vouching for them, despite the fact that detectives were still actively digging. However, Gilliam warned that playing games creates a massive issue, since you cannot publicly clear folks while secretly keeping them under the microscope. Doing so completely destroys public trust, muddies the waters, and severely jeopardizes any future courtroom battles against actual guilty parties. Shrewd defense lawyers will immediately weaponize those conflicting actions to paint the entire police department as totally incompetent. Looking at the extended impound timeline, criminal behavior expert Dr. Gary Picotto deduced that detectives are absolutely not taking this lightly. These guys are certainly not taking any lazy shortcuts. Instead of racing to shut the file, they are letting the forensics dictate the pace, regardless of how many weeks it takes to get the lab work back. When facing a mystery of this scale, Picotto noted that you desperately need a team willing to flip over every single rock. You need professionals who absolutely refuse to jump to wild conclusions, folks who hold off for hard forensic facts instead of rushing to judgment based on gut feelings or media heat are doing the right thing, though he pointed out that keeping the public in the loop is still crucial. Everyday citizens do not necessarily need a front row seat to every gritty detail of this ongoing probe. However, folks definitely deserve to understand why relatives who were officially declared innocent are still waiting to get their impounded vehicle back after more than 4 weeks. Everyone on the board came to the exact same conclusion regarding the sheriff needing to step up to the microphone and clear up this glaring inconsistency. Law enforcement absolutely must shed some light on what they are actually hunting for inside that vehicle and justify why it remains locked up in an impound lot. Currently, all this radio silence is just fueling wild speculation instead of providing solid facts, which is completely unacceptable when a woman like Nancy Guthrie has been gone for well over 30 days. March 6th, 2026 marks the 34th agonizing day since Nancy Guthrie seemingly vanished into thin air. This 84-year-old grandmother completely disappeared from the safety of her own residence during the dead of night. Whoever took her managed to knock out the security cameras, slip indoors, and extract her with such chilling precision that folks living right next door didn't hear a single peep, scream, or sign of a scuffle. Well, the very last spot she was known to be sitting in before the nightmare unfolded was her daughter's blue Honda CR-V. That is the exact same ride that brought her back from supper, rolled right up into her garage, and gave her loved ones peace of mind that she was tucked away safe and sound. Exactly 48 hours after that evening, authorities swooped in, hooked that ride up to a wrecker, and hauled it straight over to the local police yard. Detectives moved forward with a warrant backed by a judge who firmly believed that automobile was holding on to crucial criminal clues. Fast forward 33 days, and that SUV is still sitting behind chain link fences, completely torn apart, deeply inspected, and swept for every possible trace of forensic data. Mechanics are currently piecing it back together at a local body shop, yet it somehow holds onto its status as active evidence and remains completely off limits to the actual title holders. Meanwhile, the head of the department, who went on national television to completely exonerate the family from any involvement in her sudden vanishing act, is staying awfully quiet. He flat out refuses to offer any logical reason why their primary mode of transportation is stuck in a government lot instead of parked peacefully at home. That confusing paradox sits right at the very core of this entire missing persons probe. You have relatives given a clean bill of health while their personal belongings are treated like a crime scene, orchestrated by an official begging for community trust without offering an ounce of openness in return. It simply blows the mind that an automobile can be locked down for more than 30 days without a single press release detailing what the task force is hunting for or what they might have unearthed. The public is totally in the dark regarding any digital breadcrumbs pulled from the onboard computer system, just as we are clueless about the lab results. Nobody outside the precinct has a clue whether biological traces opened up fresh avenues of inquiry, blew holes in alibis, or shined a spotlight on a shadowy figure lurking off the radar. We remain absolutely clueless because the higher-ups have kept their lips sealed, even though the community has every right to be kept in the loop. No one is asking for classified case files or sensitive secrets that might jeopardize the entire operation and tip off the bad guys. We are merely asking for enough context to figure out why an SUV owned by totally exonerated citizens is being guarded like the Holy Grail in an ongoing abduction mystery. If you purchased or sold a 2 5-liter Ozark Trail backpack to a stranger for cash around early February 2026, contact the FBI immediately at 1-800-CALL-FBI. You may not realize you have information that matters. You do. If anyone in your circle showed unexplained behavioral changes after February 1, sudden absences, unusual nervousness, obsessive attention to news coverage of this case, report it to the Pima County Sheriff at 520-351-4900 or the FBI tip line. Every detail counts. Demand transparency from your local law enforcement agencies on major investigations. Communities have the right to know why evidence continues to be held after public exonerations. Silence in the face of contradiction is not protection. It is a failure of public accountability. Help elderly family members and neighbors assess their home security. Visible cameras, motion-activated lighting, and a daily check-in with a trusted contact are simple measures that create meaningful barriers. Nancy had a security camera. It was knocked out before entry. She deserved more layers of protection. If you have submitted DNA to a consumer ancestry platform, you may unknowingly help solve this case. Familial DNA tracing is now actively being used. This same method identified the Golden State Killer. It works, and investigators are using it right now. A reward of over $1.2 million is available for information that leads directly to Nancy Guthrie's safe return and the arrest of her abductor. This is a life-changing amount of money sitting unclaimed. If you know something, contact authorities now before the window closes. Former policing veteran Bob Gilliam said it plainly. You cannot publicly clear someone and quietly hold their vehicle at the same time without explanation. That contradiction either signals a strategic media move or an investigation still very much in motion. Either way, the public deserves an answer. Nancy Guthrie depends on a pacemaker. Every day, without access to her medication and regular cardiac monitoring, carries real physical consequences. This is not a case that exists only on a timeline board in a precinct. It is a medical emergency playing out in real time. The fact that the car is being rebuilt at a mechanic implies investigators expect to return it at some point. That detail matters. It means the forensic sweep is effectively finished, and the team is now waiting on laboratory results to either clear the vehicle or make it the centerpiece of a prosecution. Annie dropped her mother off safely, watched her go inside, and went home. That is what she has told investigators. If the vehicle's data confirms every word of that account, She deserves her car back, and a public explanation for why it took 33 days to confirm it. Nancy Guthrie is a mother, a grandmother, and a woman who deserves to be brought home. Share this story. Call the tip lines. The person who knows the truth is living somewhere among us right now, and every moment of silence is a moment Nancy cannot afford. Nancy Guthrie has been missing for over 33 days. The last vehicle she rode in was a blue Honda CR-V owned by her daughter, Annie. That car was seized by court warrant 2 days after the disappearance and has not been returned since. The Pima County Sheriff publicly declared Annie and her husband Tommaso fully exonerated on February 20, again on the 22nd, and again on the 25th. Yet their vehicle remains locked inside an impound lot, being forensically torn apart and rebuilt by a mechanic under police supervision. A judge signed the warrant. That requires documented probable cause, not a hunch. Courts do not authorize the seizure of a private vehicle lightly. Signing off on that warrant meant a magistrate agreed that criminal evidence likely existed inside that specific car. Modern vehicles are mobile hard drives. Every door latch, every speed change, every passenger seat pressure reading, and every GPS coordinate is logged with a timestamp. The onboard computer can confirm or completely contradict a timeline claimed by anyone in that car. Forensic teams do not just swab surfaces. They pull the seats, gut the console, rip up the floor mats, and sweep the cargo area for biological traces, unknown DNA, chemical residue, and evidence of cleaning. This process takes weeks. Lab results from early February are only arriving now. Former FBI agent John Lamb made a critical point. Only a district attorney can formally exonerate a suspect. A sheriff can say someone is not currently a focus of investigation. That is not the same as a legal clearance. These two things are not interchangeable. Asterisk, asterisk. When official statements contradict official actions, the actions tell the truth. A vehicle held for 33 days while its owners are declared innocent is not a routine procedure. It is an unanswered question that the public deserves to have addressed. Asterisk, asterisk.